You're listening to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. This episode brought to you by the Easy Home Buyer, serving the Spokane and Coeur d'Alene area. If you're an investor in the greater Spokane area looking to connect with wholesalers, look no further than the Easy Home Buyer. Click on the link in the show notes to be put on their buyer list today, and check out episode 17 with the Easy Home Buyer founder, Chad Young. And by FlexiSpot, the maker of ergonomic furniture. If you're looking for a new adjustable desk, look no further than the E7 standing desk. The retractable frame allows you to adjust the desk's width from 43.4 inches out to 74.8 inches. So you can have a desk that is over 6 feet long that adjusts in height to fit the needs of your space and office. Save $20 now with the offer code WSE720 at checkout. All right, welcome back to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. I probably should have hit record roughly 20 minutes ago as Brad and I have been talking as per usual around here. Man, you get talking about real estate and you get talking about baseball and I forget to press record. So, but I finally did, and we're ready to talk some real estate and get into where Brad is in his real estate journey. So Brad, welcome to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. We will make you a Washington State person for the day, even though you find yourself living in Denver, Colorado at this point in time. But as we know, real estate is real estate. And so I just wanted to have a chat with you and all your success and hopefully some information that we can share with our listeners today. So Brad, welcome to the podcast. Tell listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of where you are in your real estate journey.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, thanks for having me. I've actually enjoyed spending some time up in Washington State. Went up to Ballard. This was when, I'm a former pastor. So you asked my background. I'm a former pastor. I was an Acts 29 pastor, which is the whole Mars Hill, Mark Driscoll was right there in Seattle.
Yeah.
So the times that I was up in the Seattle area was going to some Mars Hill conferences up at Ballard. In fact, one of my first, this is after I got out of ministry and started doing real estate, one of my very first hires was a guy from Seattle.
Oh, cool.
So you guys are a little quirky, which I like. Us here in Colorado, it's very similar. West Coast to Colorado. Yeah, much different than when we go to the South, where I do most of my deals, and right now in Memphis, Tennessee. So a lot different cultures, but frankly, I'm the kind of guy that likes to see all the different culture. So it doesn't matter to me. I enjoy it. So
yeah, that's awesome. We'll talk a little bit about your real estate journey. Where are you at, and what's going on with you today?
Oh man, well, like I said, I was a former pastor. Planted a church back in 2008. November 1st of that year, 2008, I was managing a hotel while I was planting this church. My wife calls me up and says, "Hey, we've got a wedding tonight. I'm at Target. I've got this dress picked out. It's going to cost $50. Can I pick it up and wear it tonight to the wedding?" And though I had just got paid November 1st, right? That day we didn't have any money. We didn't have enough. We didn't have any money for anything extra. And so $50 was like a big deal. And so I told her, I said, we just don't have any money. She's super gracious. I'll find something else. I've got some, it'll be just fine. No big deal. Super nice, wonderful. I hung up the phone, went into my office and cried like a baby. And I said, man, I am not providing for my family as I should. Right. And so I said, that was the day that something had to change. And so at the time, similar to your situation where you were not really paying attention to invest, real estate or investing. I wasn't either. And like I said, I went to, I didn't go to business school. I went to seminary, and so I'm as green as it gets, but I had heard one statement by someone years ago said that when there's blood in the streets, there's money to be made. And if you remember in 2008, that's when there was blood in the streets. I mean, we've had a huge recession, particularly in the real estate world. And so I basically said to myself, all right, I've got to figure out investing. I didn't know if that would be stock investing. I didn't know if it'd be real estate investing. I didn't know if it'd be investing in businesses. And so I just kind of applied the same approach I did through seminary, which was reading books and researching. And, now we've got this wonderful thing called the internet, right?
Yeah.
And I was researching, and YouTube was starting to take hold in everyday life, right? And not like it is now, but it was getting there. So I read everything, I watched everything, I went to every RIA club, did all that kind of stuff, and wound up. It took me almost 2 years to do my first deal. So I did my very first deal as a wholesale deal. I did that in August of 2010. So I researched. I was, reading books at 2 or 3 o'clock in the night. In fact, my wife bought me a little book light that I could attach to the book so I could read it, right? And so since then, I've done deals. Since 2010, I've done over 500 something deals.
Wow.
Probably over $60 million worth of real estate. Every type of deal there is to be done, I've done it. Installment land contracts, lease options, sub-2s, of course, wholesaling.
Yeah.
I've wholesaled lease options. I've done land, commercial apartments. I've done it all, right? In fact, bought a hotel in 2012, which is selling on Friday.
Congrats.
Thank you. So that's been my real estate journey, and have really kind of used a lot of those experiences to hone in on what it is that I feel like I'm really good at, and what I can focus to kind of expand, which is holding rental properties in these cash flowing markets and partnering with equity partners to expand. I mean, that's.
And I want to dig into that a little bit, because I think you've got some great insight in that area. But you talk about this moment where you just knew you had to do something and you had to invest in something. What made you choose real estate over, saying, the stock market? Was it really just 2008 and you're just like, they're like, real estate's down, that's where I'm going to swim to? Is that what you were?
Well, I thought it would be stock, actually.
Yeah.
So I started reading I started, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And then went to some weekend course. I went to, the lever up type stuff where they say, here's a free 2-hour thing at a hotel. And then, here's a $500 3-day event. So I went to the $500 three-day event. And then while they're at the 3-day event, I didn't realize this until much later, but what they're really trying to do is get you into their $120,000, thing. So it's a lever up type situation. And I started learning some things at that event, that 3-day event, and said, let me kind of try to apply this. And there were these mock real estate things. And so I said, let me test this out a little bit. So I tested it out. I had read one of Jim Cramer's books. I read the Value Investing book by Benjamin Graham. I read things about, from Buffett. So I read a lot of things, talked to a lot of people. Investopia was like my best friend at that time.
Yeah.
And so then I started trying to do stock. And I did these mock stock situations, and I was, doing all the different kind of options and whatnot, iron condors and whatever it might be. And I realized something very, very quickly that was the big shift. Number one, you needed some money to be able to invest in stock. And I didn't have any money. I had less than $600 in my bank account and less than a 600 credit score.
Yeah.
So as I'm playing with the mock $100,000 that they give you, I realized, wait a second, I don't even have $100,000 to kind of play around with stock. I mean, when I say I'm broke, I am broke. I'm paycheck. Yeah. I'm worth more dead than alive, right? Because I had some life insurance. So that was one reason why I never really went towards stock investing. The second reason was you have to know, or at least have an idea about what the stock is going to do.
Yeah.
Is it going to go up or is it going to go down?
Yeah.
And
it's it's future planning.
That's right. That's right.
You have to be a futurist, which nobody's good at.
Yeah. You got to be a futurist. You got to guess. The other part is you don't have to just guess based on the financials.
Yeah.
You have to guess based on public opinion.
Yeah.
And how are you going to, I just looked at that and said, I don't know. And then the other piece is you also have to guess like right now, even more than back then, you have to guess what the big money is wanting to do.
Yeah.
And all of those things I just said is number one, I had no business in that market. So then the second thing that I thought was, well, then a business, right?
Yeah.
I was still wanting to do ministry, so I needed something on the side, and I thought, man, if I start up a business, most businesses fail. I don't know enough about business. I do know how to attract a crowd to get them to come to church and listen to me speak, but I didn't know how to monetize that. Like, I'm doing that with tithes and offering, but I didn't know what that looked like on that side. So I didn't know what business I would even want to be in. I go, what widget would I want to sell? And I'm like, I don't even know if I want to sell widgets, So those are the two things that kind of, and so real estate, I picked up a book by Peter Conti called, basically how to do real estate with no cash and no credit. And I go, that's ironic.
That sounds like me.
I don't have cash or credit. Let me take a look at that. Peter Conti and David Finkel. So I read that book actually while I was in seminary.
Wow.
In Louisville, Kentucky at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. And I was there for a 2-week period of time, but like the classes got done early and there was not homework or papers to write or whatever. So I'm reading this book and I finished it while I was there. And on the one weekend that I was there, I had one of the things they said to do was go down to the local library, get all the old newspapers. This is when newspapers were a thing, and go look at the old for rent listings, and call those people up and see if they had rented the property. And then if they haven't, ask them if they'd be willing to sell it. And if they say, well, yeah, I was trying to sell it and I'm trying to rent it, kind of stuck, go out there. So my very first negotiation was in Louisville, Kentucky, this rental property. I negotiated a owner carry situation. Frankly, I should have done the deal, but I didn't know enough about it. And
now you look back, you're like, I should have done that deal.
Well, Jeff, here's the reason why I did it. Because I go, if I'm trying to negotiate deals in Denver where I live, I might try to do something here that I really don't know. Because I had just done the mock stock stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like playing around with it, but it's all playing around, right?
Right.
And so I tried to apply that same approach in Louisville. And the reason why I went through with trying to negotiate this was I knew there was no way I would buy it. I didn't know how. I didn't have contractors in Louisville, Kentucky. There's no way I could have managed this thing. Like, if I did get to the very last minute, I would just say, oh, you know what? I've changed my mind. Yeah. And that's precisely actually what I did. Yeah. So I got down to that. So that's what got me into real estate was, okay, what these guys in this one book are saying, not this one book, it was several books, but that one book in particular, what they're saying in this book actually works. And so I started heavily investing in my education. And so it wasn't long before I started doing deals. And so the reason I chose real estate was I could get my head around it. See, the other part was pastors are actually really good at understanding humans, right?
Right. Yeah.
And not just, we get it from both sides, from the affluent to the lower class. Like,
there's an empathy, right? There's an empathy to the work you do. You just a natural empathy to that work that allows you to understand people.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, real estate, whether you want it to or not, is a people business.
It's 100% a people business. In fact, the guy I was telling you about in Seattle was a pastor, a former Acts 29 pastor. He's now doing deals in Phoenix. But because of his natural ability to understand people, markets, like, you understand why people would live in this area versus that area. Like, because you understand the struggle behind what's going, not the struggle, but the mentality behind going on. And it could be a struggle or it could be prosperous or whatever. Yeah. So naturally speaking, pastors are really good at real estate because of that. And so, man, it took me no time to be like, oh yeah. Oh, so the best place to acquire real estate is in the middle of the market, the lower to middle of the market if you're doing this strategy, or the upper end of the middle of the market if you're doing that strategy. And I go, oh, well, that is this neighborhood and that is that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like, it was like no problem. So like locations were never a problem for me.
Yeah. Interesting.
So,
I love that.
so real estate worked because of that. And then I started getting paid, and I did my first deal which was I wholesaled a deal in Colorado Springs, which is an hour away from Denver, and made $1,000. And that's a fun story. So let me tell you that story.
Okay.
So I subscribed to this lead gen site.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know anything about marketing at the time. I barely knew anything about sales. I only knew how to do whatever the script said.
Yeah.
And so I called up this guy. He was a disabled veteran. He had a rental property that he was wanting to sell, and we agreed to a price. I drove down there, gave him $100 in cash and earnest money. He signed the purchase and sale agreement for $100,000. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got this under contract. I'm going to be able to sell this, right? And keep in mind, driving down was that's extra money.
Yeah.
Giving this guy $100 for my earnest money was a big deal for me, but it was only $100, so I was like, hey, I got to get into this somehow. Hopefully, I can get this thing back out. I spent the next, and this is one lesson I learned, now 13 years ago, was you got to have your buyers lined up first, right? So I'm trying to wholesale this, and I didn't know who to call. I kept calling everybody. I posted it up on Craigslist. All the things you probably, really shouldn't do.
Yeah, or should have had set up ahead of time.
I was probably I was probably breaking broken without a license rules type stuff, and kept showing it to people. Well, there was a couple, a family that was living in the house. And I keep showing up because I got a lockbox and a key, and I call them. We're going to come over and over and over and over again. Finally, these people move out because I've pestered them so many times, showing this property like I'm a realtor, right? And he calls me up. He goes, "Well, you better buy it now since they moved out, because that was my source of income. I'm a disabled veteran. Once I sell this house, now I'm debt free and I'm going to live whatever." The last person I showed this house to, this is probably the 6th or 7th time I've driven down to the Springs, is this young investor who can't even make his own decision on this thing, but brings his hard money lender with him. So they look around the house, and they talk about what they could lend on it, whatnot. And the investor goes, "Well, I would have to come up with $20,000, like, because he had taken some course the weekend before, and about how to flip houses or whatever." And the hard money lender, you'd have to come up with $20,000 to be able for us to lend on it, and you to fix it up and then flip it. And he goes, "Well, I can't do that." So I'm totally dejected. We're walking out. I go, "I'm gonna have to cancel this contract on this guy." And as we're walking out, the hard money lender locks his keys in his car. Okay. So I'm new from Denver, hour away. This other guy's new, doesn't know what's going on. This is a hard money lender who has made thousands of loans. Okay?
Yeah.
This is a seasoned investor. He just locked his keys in his car. He called his wife. His wife's on the way to do that. And so while we're there, we're just kind of shooting the breeze and doing similar things, just asking questions. Hey, what do you think about this? And he's telling us stories and all this amazing thing. And he gets to explaining to us what Section 8 is. He goes, "In this house," and I didn't know what Section 8 was. He goes, "This house would be a great Section 8 house." He goes, "I love these kind of houses." And in my mind, I go, well, do you want to buy it? He goes, no. This is his deal. This is this investor's deal.
Yeah.
The investor goes, "I'm out of it. I don't want anything to do with it." He looks at me and goes, "Well, how much do you want for it?" I go, "Man, if I could make $1,000 on this, I'd be excited."
Yeah.
So I wound up selling it to this hard money lender for $101,000. Basically paid for my gas, right? And whatever I had subscribed to, back and forth, going back. And that's when I said, because I was leaving there for the 6th or 7th time saying, I other people might be able to do this. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Now, 500 something deals later, like we're wholesaling deals right now. I now teach people how to wholesale. right?
I know. I mean, this is now
So
to talk about full circle. Now you're on the other side. You've written the book, Rollover to Retire. You're the one out there teaching newbies how to get started in all of this. It's
yeah,
such a great story.
yeah.
I just love those stories of how we all got started and the little things along the way.
Never would have happened if this guy didn't lock his keys in his car.
I know, it's always something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Can you talk maybe, you go to a lot of REI meetups, you do a lot of presentations around the US. You've written the book and, help coach other real estate investors. Can you maybe talk about what's maybe one or two common misconceptions or challenges that you see new investors face when they want to get into real estate?
I would say, so first I have stopped coaching.
Okay.
I used to do a lot of that. We actually had a franchise, a competing franchise with We Buy Ugly Houses, and I sold that franchise in 2019. And I really haven't done much coaching since then.
Okay.
And part of the reason for it is what is one of the misconceptions that I'm going to address here. Actually, I'm going to give you two misconceptions. Number one, you are either on the blue collar side of the deal or you're on the white collar side of the deal. Okay. And what the number one misconception is when people try to do both sides of the deal. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, the white collar side of a deal is the capital, or if you're using leverage, which is I don't agree with debt, whatever. We'll get into that in a second. White collar is using your cash or your credit to be involved in the deal. Blue collar is finding the deal, fixing the deal, doing the work, doing the work on it, the property management side. And so what a lot of people do, they sit there in their middle management job, making some type of income, getting a little bit extra, and then saying, I want to go and do it all myself. Okay. That, number one, is very slow, very difficult. The learning curve to learn how to do real estate is far more large than most people think. It's part of the reason why I've stopped doing coaching is, yep, you can you do a deal in 30 days and make $30,000 and whatever it is? It's possible, but it's not probable.
Yeah.
And so, regardless of your system, and I'm a former, like, I used to own Freedom Soft. Now I have a different kind of position, a back end, a silent position in that company, and Freedom Soft is in my opinion, the best real estate CRM out there for real estate investors. And we see people come and go so much because they have not decided which side of the deal that they want to be on. Are you going to be a white collar investor? Or are you going to be a blue collar investor? Well, for me, when I first started, I didn't have money. So by default, I had to become blue collar, which meant I had to learn how to do the business, how to do the deal. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first misconception, I think, is trying to do too much too soon on both lanes, and frankly, allowing your emotions to get involved and buying a deal. The whole thing is action without information is foolish. Information without action is useless, right? You got to have both of them. And so that's one misconception, is not knowing your lane and staying in your lane.
I like that.
The second misconception, number two, really centers around the BRRRR method, where you buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. I actually own BRRRRmethod.com, and I don't do anything with it. But
just so nobody else uses it.
Well, I was going to use it when I was coaching and teaching and all that kind of stuff, but now I don't believe in debt. So, and that's been since 2016 that I really kind of took that position, and has worked out far better than me trying to work with the banks. See, I prefer doing deals as partners, okay, with partners, private money or whatever, where we're partners, not a debt situation, but a partnership situation. Let's share in the cash flow. Let's share in the equity. Let's sit on the same side of the table. We have have similar interest. We have the same interests. We want this thing to make money. And getting into debt using Burr method or whatever, even not Burr method, just traditional finance,
Right.
you are also getting into a partnership.
Right.
The problem is the bank is the absolute worst partner you could have, because
Yeah.
if things don't go their way, they take your personal assets, they take that deal away from you, they ruin your reputation. You can't have a foreclosure without debt. You also can't have bankruptcy without debt. So I looked at it and I just said, instead of partnering with the bank, let me partner with individuals. But the misconception that there is that nice banker who has been calling you, and when you show up to their office, they give you a bottle of water or coffee, and they look real nice, and they got a suite at the local sports arena, and they're doing all these things to to wine you and dine you. I tell you, it gets real bad real quick. I asked those guys in 07 and 08.
Yeah.
Ask those guys in 07, 08 what the banks did to them. So I think there's a lot of misconception, particularly right now, and we're starting to see it now that interest rates have gone up. Like
Right.
there are guys who are stuck in deals across the country right now
I see them in
because of those situations.
Facebook groups all the time.
Yeah. And frankly, we haven't even hit.
I know.
We haven't even hit the problem. If there is going to be a crash, I stopped predicting the future for real estate a long time ago. Well, in 2019, and I'll tell you the story about that. But we've not even hit the bottom or even close to coming to a downturn. So I think that the misconception around debt is that it's your friend, and debt is not your friend. Debt, you just ask one question. If you could have the same equity and the same cash flow without debt, which would you choose? You choose without debt. 9 times people are using debt because they don't think that they can do deals without using debt. And that's simply that's not the truth. Yeah. That is absolutely not the truth.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's stay on that for a little bit and let's talk about this. How many houses do you have now debt free?
93 in Memphis. And I'm selling my hotel again on Friday. Once I sell that hotel on Friday, I will have no more debt, business or otherwise. I haven't had personal debt for a long time, but I wrongly thought that there was such thing as good debt and bad debt. And there is no such thing as good debt and bad debt. It's all bad debt.
Yeah.
And so the bad debt that I'm getting out of is on this hotel. And
so how many do you have the same partners? Like you've established, can you talk about how you're finding these equity partners and what does that look like?
Sure.
The way that you're setting up these deals and what is that looking like? Maybe even if you can maybe take us through an investment that you've done.
Good. Yeah. So of the deals that I have in Memphis, the majority of them I own free and clear. But it's probably close to 50-50 now. Partnerships to just my portfolio,
just your own.
Yeah, it's right around there. I think I might have right at 40 and some change. I would have to get into my system because we buy and sell. I was supposed to close a 5-pack today. It got delayed until tomorrow, and so every week we get together and we look at it. And as of today, I have 93. Tomorrow I might have 87. I don't know. So every week I get together and count my properties, which is always a problem because we're like, well, how many are vacant? How many are in rehab? That kind of stuff. That's just how it works. But what I've done is once you have the chops, the real estate ability to find a deal, fix a deal, and manage that, and I facilitate the deal.
Yeah.
If you can do those things, capital is waiting for you. If you have that skill, there is so much capital out there. It's unbelievable. So, I did write the book so that I can kind of tell people what I do, and it's kind of a business card for myself to be in full transparency. And I'm transparent about that in the book. But people come out of the woodwork. I would teach at a real estate investment club about what I'm doing and say, hey, if anybody wants to chat with me, hit me up and we'll go get coffee. I'll explain what's going on. So finding the capital actually is not very difficult. Finding the deal is not actually that difficult if you're using the right strategies, right?
Yeah.
Frankly, the hardest part, as far as I'm concerned, and it's not that hard anymore because I've built systems on it and someone else does it, is rehabbing the houses and finding a tenant. The hardest part is managing the team, which is my business now when you have 93, because now you're like,
Yeah.
well, we're going to expand into St. Louis. And so
Yeah.
now I have to create systems, and I've written another book that's an internal process book to help train new staff. So it's running the business is
Yeah.
the hardest part. The actual real estate, like for people who are getting started, I highly suggest figuring out equity partnerships or lease options. Those would be the two strategies that I would use. But the one thing to worry about is if you're doing an equity partnership, the SEC may consider that a security. And so I have spent a lot of time, energy, effort, and money to paper our deals correctly. So I'll tell everybody what you should do. It's an operating agreement with a private placement memorandum. It's going to be a 506B if they're friends, or 506C if they're not friends. And if you're partnering with someone that's not a friend that you did marketing towards or whatever, and they've like, for instance, if somebody listens to this podcast,
Yeah.
picks up my book or just reaches out to me or whatever, they would have to be an accredited investor in order to do deals with me,
Right.
because that's a 506C exemption that we're relying on, that accredited investors are able to enjoy. So,
Yeah.
but if you're friends and family, you can go get a 506B. And frankly, I would say of all of our partners, 80% of them are friends and family, or friends
Wow.
and family of friends and family.
Wow.
So you don't need to go write a book or get a website or go on a speaking tour or anything like that to get capital. You literally could probably get it in your backyard barbecue. So,
Yeah.
but that's how we structure the deals, is meeting with those people who say, I've got capital, I want to do real estate, but I
Yeah.
don't want to deal with tenants and toilets. I want
Yep.
someone else to deal with that. And so long as you, as a blue collar investor, can meet that need, can go find those deals, fix those deals, and facilitate those deals, dude, put those deals together all day long and go make a lot of money.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. What's the best way for you? How do you stay how do you stay informed and up to date on some of the changing trends in real estate? And I'd like to even narrow that down. No matter what market you're in, I invested here in the Spokane market. You're in Memphis, Tennessee. What are some of the numbers that you look for? And you say you might be expanding into St. Louis. Like, are there numbers that you look for? Are there trends that you are looking out for on where you want to invest? What are kind of your parameters?
I love this question. This is one of the better questions that I've been asked, and I think I have a really good answer for it. Okay.
Okay.
You don't really need, there are some numbers, I'll get into the numbers, but the main question, you just have to ask one question. Why would someone want to live here? Why would someone want to live here? Okay. And if you can get the answer to that question, you'll know if that is a good deal. For instance, I only now buy in B neighborhoods, B and C plus type neighborhoods. Okay. The reason I do that is because I know the answer to that question. They like the schools. See, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot brick ranch in the middle of the block with a 2-car garage if I can get it, or a carport. That's great. The reason I want that B neighborhood, and I'm looking for a blue collar family with 2 or 3 kids. Hopefully, those kids are just getting into kindergarten or first grade and love the schools that they're in. Because if I can get that person and they stay with me for at least 2 years, they'll stay with me for more than 5 or 10. And the reason is really simple. I make them a better deal. to stick with me because I do below market rent in exchange for increased tenant responsibility. Meaning,
Mm.
that blue collar guy can fix that leaky sink
Oh, I
or
love
that
this.
light switch that's not working. And in exchange for that, when the rent around is $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 or whatever it might be, my rent is 14 13 14 1500, so it's $100 or $200 below market rent. Secondly, if he does decide to try to go buy a house, he's going to quickly realize that his rent to me is a better deal than whatever property he's going to buy,
Mm.
and the amount that he's going to pay and have to be responsible for the big maintenance
For all the stuff.
items. Yeah. And this is the type of training I do when we're leasing up these properties. I have a video that I record of me going through the lease and teaching and training them these kinds of things. It takes over an hour to do one of my lease ups because I'm trying to teach them about my program to keep them in my properties
Mm.
long term. Okay.
Yeah. And so is that part of your lease when you lease up? Is it you will fix the little stuff? Like, I don't know. Is that written into that's written into the lease?
Oh yeah. So I have and I explained to them there are functional repairs, there are cosmetic repairs, and then there are, you know, in between. I can't remember exactly what I put, but there's a like a fence or something. That's not a functional. That's not cosmetic, but that's like help me out with these kind of things.
Yeah.
So functional repairs, I will repair. I will handle if they can handle. Wonderful, great, awesome.
Yeah.
Cosmetic repairs, I don't do anything with cosmetic repairs. If it's a chipped sink, if it's a straying carpet, if it's whatever, I don't fix cosmetic repairs. Period.
Mm.
And then this in between thing is where if you can help me out on these things, like I said, like a fence,
I'll buy the supplies. You do the labor.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
But what I have done is the system that I use is from a guy named David Tilney. The guys David Tilney and Peter Fortunato and all those old school guys do it very similar to how I do it. What I want is for them to turn my tenants to turn this house into their home.
Right.
And so I say, when you leave, I will, depending on, let me know every time you do anything, every time you change a light bulb, every time you put a battery in a smoke detector, every time you fix a sink, let me know all these things, because we mark it down and we keep track of it. And every time you do that, when you go to move out, we're going to bonus you based off of all the repairs and maintenance that you've done to my house, that you've taken my headaches away. Because I've got 5 rules for all of my tenants. Number 1, pay your rent on time or early. Number 2, maintain and improve the property and ground. Number 3, be a good neighbor. Number 4, stay the rest of your life and the life of your kids. And number 5, leave me alone. So if you can find those 5 things, okay, then you can get into one of my properties.
Yeah.
And so I created the program. They love it. I gave one guy, when he moved out of my property, it was here in Colorado. I gave him $8,000.
Wow.
When he left, because what he did while he was in my property he was in there for about 4 years. He didn't quite get the 5-year mark. That's our benchmark. We want 5 years.
Yeah.
But he was a carpenter who had a bunch of buddies, and he had all this extra material. Sometimes things would get ordered that was wrong. He gave me a new kitchen, new countertops in those granite countertops in those kitchen, a new deck, a new sprinkler system, and he tiled one of the bathrooms.
Wow!
So by me giving him $8,000, and he did all the work himself.
Yeah, for $15,000, $20,000
$20,000, $8,000, dude, no problem. Thank you very much. Right, and it made it so that he was one of my best. I did an interview like this with him, and I was like, "Did you really think I would pay you $8,000 for this?" He goes, "Brad, I did not think you would." He goes, he goes, "Brad, I didn't think you would." And then he paused and he goes, "But I thought you could." And he said, "Because you've dealt fair with me from the very beginning. You told me what the program was. You stuck to your word. Whatever you said, you did." And so I thought there might be something in this for me. I didn't know it would be $8,000, but I thought there'd be something in this for me. And regardless, I wanted to turn the house into my home.
Yeah,
they're living there, right?
Yeah. I
Tenants.
wanted granite countertops, so I put them in.
So I put those in, and I had buddies who helped me do it, and it's no big deal, right? He had some remnants, and I got it for free, and whatever. And so where investors get it wrong, man, is they think that the house is the asset. The house is not the asset. See, according to Rich Dad Poor Dad, an asset is something that makes you money. A liability is something that costs you money. A vacant house doesn't make you any money. It costs you money. So a vacant house is a liability. So the only difference between a vacant house, the only difference between a house that's a liability and a house that's an asset is the tenant. The tenant is who pays you. The tenant is what gives you the cash flow. The tenant is the one that makes your income passive. The tenant, therefore, is the one that will make you wealthy. Treat your tenants well. And they will pay you way more than you ever could possibly think. Don't jack around with tenants. I'm on all these Facebook groups and people are talking about, oh, should I do this or should I do that? Listen, take care of them. Because here's the deal. Yeah. If that person I say I don't do cosmetic repairs. I set the stage. She calls up and is complaining, this sink is chipped and I don't, what, blah, blah, blah. Am I going to fix the chipped sink? Probably. In fact, I will. Because I'll go in there and be like, this is not included in the lease, but you've been a good tenant. I really appreciate you. You've been here for 2-3 years, never missed a payment. Everything's great. Let me help you with this sink, and also let me help you with this and this and this.
Yeah.
Do you think that goes a long way with them? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that's the tenant mindset. So I know we went way off topic because you were asking about how I analyze the deals, but what I'm looking for, there's only one number I'm looking for is the price to rent ratio. I want for it to be as close to that 1% rule as possible. So if it's $100,000, I want it to rent for $1,000.
$1,000.
But what I can say when I'm looking through trends in the marketplace is, again, I go back to that same question, which is, why would someone want to live here? Yeah. So I actually am physically in the markets that I'm investing in. I just flew in from Memphis yesterday, and every time I'm in town, I drive around to not only the markets that the houses around the houses that I'm in, but around the area. Detroit didn't happen overnight.
Right.
Detroit took decades, really, to get there. Same with parts of Baltimore. It takes a time for neighborhoods to devolve.
Yeah.
And investors are some of the laziest people. They buy this house, hope that it just keeps paying them, not knowing that their house is being surrounded by a war zone.
Yeah.
And you should have gotten out 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so as far as market trends are concerned, because I'm not the one ruling the country and pulling the strings, if you will, I thought I was the smartest guy in the world in 2018 and 19 when I sold all my rental properties here in Denver, thinking that we were at the height of the market, and all indicators would have said I was exactly right.
Yeah.
And then COVID hits, and then we printed $7 trillion, and then we've seen the market go up. So I stopped predicting the future. I just look at what's the price to rent ratio. Well, first, is this a market that someone would want to live in? Is this a neighborhood?
Who would want to live here?
Who would want to live here? The price to rent ratio something that I can make cash flow on. Mm-hmm. And if you're at that close to that 1%, you can cash flow pretty much.
Yeah.
However, on that front, you can get a 1% price, 1% price to rent ratio and not make any money.
Yeah.
Because you've got this house that rents for too low. Like I was buying in Memphis these houses that rent for $600, $700, $800, and I was paying $30 or $40 grand for them. And thought, oh man, my cap rate is 14% or 17%. I'm the smartest guy around. And I realized that Excel is a liar. Your formula will only output what you input on it. And so I'm going to ask you a question, Jeff. You won't get the answer wrong, I promise you.
Okay.
Okay. And in Washington, it might be different. So just whatever comes to your mind first, go ahead and answer it.
All right.
to paint a 1,500 square foot house, okay, how much do you think it would cost to paint a 1,500 square foot house?
External and internal?
Just internal.
Oh, just internal? 1,500 square feet?
Yep.
Close to about $10,000.
Okay, perfect. $10,000. What if that house rents for $1,000? How much would it cost to paint that house?
$10,000.
How about if it rents for $2,000?
Same.
$10,000.
Yeah.
So when everybody does that math, where they go 30% of the rent and whatever, that's completely wrong. That's totally wrong, because inside of that 30% is your taxes, insurance, management, maintenance, vacancy. The only thing, there's not one number in that 30% off of the rent, or 40%, whatever you put in there, whatever your calculation is, that stays the same percentage. And it's definitely not based off of the rent. Okay. So I think that where a lot of things go wrong is not just the price to rent ratio. I like that idea. But at the end of the day, what I want to do when I'm entering into a deal is I want equity when I first get there, just like your wife. I don't pay retail, right? And then secondly, I want cash flow. I want equity and I want cash flow. And that's off of real numbers, not, it's 30%. So that house, to paint a 1,500 square foot house, is what it is, regardless of what the rent is. It could be renting for, $100,000 a month, but the guy who's coming in to paint this doesn't concern himself with what the rent is.
With what the rent's going to be.
Yeah. And so when we look at those kind of, I've said a lot in this whole thing, but I want to summarize the whole idea of, figuring out the trends in real estate. Rather than trying to figure out the trends in real estate, I think investors need to figure out the trends in themselves. What is it that you want to invest in? What kind of personality do you have? Are you a no debt guy like me? Are you a leveraged guy like most people?
Me.
Like you. Are you a single family kind of guy? Are you a duplex kind of guy? Are you an apartment kind of guy? Are you there's so many different ways to make money.
Yeah.
Once you find out yourself, then you go find a market that matches you.
I like that.
That would be my thing, because you can't predict the trends. You ask, why does someone want to live here? Here's some major indicators, but at the end of the day, you're wanting equity, you're wanting cash flow. And that's the way I have over the past 13 years or so, or 15 years now that I consider myself a real estate investor from 2008, though I hadn't bought a house. That's how I look at the trends in real estate, because I've been wrong too many times.
Yeah. Let's change gears a little bit here as we get ready to kind of wind this down. This has been great. Thank you, Brad, so much. I just love hearing the stories and so many great little tidbits as you go through. But your book, Rollover to Retire.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about what inspired you to write it. Let's start with that. What inspired you to write the book?
I kept getting people asking. I got the idea from a friend of mine. He's a stock broker, and he kept getting people asking him, "Hey, can I take you to lunch and bend your ear? Right? Pick your brain, that kind of stuff."
Yeah.
And he put together this little brochure that he said, "Oh yeah, no problem. Read this first, and then when you're done, give me a call." Okay. So I thought, instead of going to these endless, oftentimes very profitless meetups with people, I said, let me hand them something that they can read, where they're going to go get pretty much 90+% of how I think about real estate.
Yeah.
And then I'll meet with them and I'll pay for lunch. And I tell everybody, read the book and then I'll pay for lunch, right? There's no big deal. But it was a time saver. That was what inspired me to write it. Okay. Since then, it has turned into my company, right?
Yeah.
And so it is my real estate equity partnership. It is my security offering, right? Compliant with the SEC. It is my business that I'm expanding throughout the country. And what I wanted to do, though, was give people a simple plan. A simple plan that took out all the complications that we see in real estate. You can bigger pockets yourself to death, YouTube yourself to death, finding all these different kinds of strategies. And for the average person who has a 401k, IRA, working in middle management at a
Yeah.
corporation, some of them don't really want to have to figure out all of these strategies. So I said, let me get a book that does two things. One, like I said, weed out people who are just going to waste my time. But then
That's great.
second part was, but I do want to teach people. I enjoy teaching people, and I enjoy teaching people how to build wealth. And so I said, let me give them a simple plan that anybody can apply. And the plan is really simple. It's buy one single family rental property at a discount with cash every year and hold it for the rest of your life. That's the plan.
Yeah.
And I break down each one of those factors in the book and explain why cash instead of leverage, why single family instead of apartments, why, and then I give a bonus, which is how to roll over their 401k or IRAs into a self-directed 401k or IRA, which will allow them to buy real estate. They don't have to play in the stock market anymore. They don't have to play in what is if Musk is going to smoke pot on Joe Rogan's podcast and have Tesla stock drop or whatever. They don't have to play in those games if they don't want to.
Yeah.
And what they can do is take control of their retirement and control of their wealth building by buying 123 Main Street, a real asset that is a commodity that people need and will always need. And so I said, let me teach people how to do that, because that is the third reason why I wrote the book, a way that we can work together. Or someone can just do it on their own, or they can say to themselves, yep, this sounds good, but I don't want to even do that. But at least you get it was one resource that I said, let me get rid of all the complexities in real estate investing, simplify it. As a pastor, I have to take high theological discussions, but I got to put it on the bottom shelf. I've got to put milk on the floor.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to do with this book.
I like that. That's so good. And we'll make sure there's a link, of course, to the book and to Brad's website in the show notes. Again, that book is Rollover to Retire. Brad, as we get ready to close this out, one last question to you. What's the number one piece of advice that you like to give to investors, whether they are seasoned investors or they're new into the real estate area? What's maybe your biggest piece of advice, or the thing that you are very passionate about that you want to share with everyone?
Incredibly passionate about this is one phrase, do it without debt.
Do it without debt.
Don't get into debt. Too many new people think just because you got approved on a HELOC on your house that you should go and use that to go buy real estate and then leverage that and then leverage that. I know guys who would leverage their mother if they could. I am a no debt guy. I know I'm a black sheep in the real estate world. It's fun. I go on podcasts. I get a little bit more insult. I appreciate you, Jeff. We haven't had to have hand-to-hand combat. Maybe on the next show we do that. We come in, swinging. But I've just seen firsthand too many guys who have lost their business, lost their investments, lost their families, lost their wives, lost their kids because of debt. You take debt out of the equation, and had I taken debt out of the equation, Jeff, I'm not kidding you. I said it in the book. I think I said I would be worth 3 or 4 more times. I think that's a gross understatement. I'd be worth 10 times what I'm worth right now. And here's why. Here's one reason why. Think about all the guys who have made a lot of money. In the wealthiest guys on the planet are all business guys.
Yeah.
They took it public. They got investors, right? It's very.
Yep.
You notice I read
Yeah.
the autobiography, the only approved autobiography of Warren Buffett called Snowball. Big old book, man. I actually read it on Audible, and I think it's 36 hours. And it's like, good Lord, this is a behemoth. But when you think about what he's doing, it applies right to real estate. I know that sounds odd for stock guys, but what he was doing early was he was buying distressed businesses, trying to get one last run out of it, and exiting that business for some money. I mean, that's a fix and flip.
Yeah.
And then if he didn't like that strategy, he would hold it and get dividends. Well, that's a buy and hold, right? Like there's no. And then how did he fund all those deals? Well, he had partners.
Yeah.
He called them shareholders, but they were all family and friends. People who gave him money that said, go buy distressed businesses and let's go make a bunch of money. And ultimately that's what Berkshire Hathaway was a defunct textile mill, right?
Yeah.
And so my one piece of advice is do it without debt. Either pay cash if you're a white collar investor. And there are a lot of people out there who are sitting on a lot of money in their 401ks or cash or whatever.
Out there right now.
Don't risk that. Don't leverage that. Put that into real estate without debt. And if you don't know how to do it, reach out to someone, me, somebody else, Jeff. A lot of people will help you to put that into real estate without any debt. If you don't have capital, learn the skills that will attract the capital. And I promise you, I'd be worth 10 times I am right now if I had avoided debt. Because what did I keep doing? I kept paying a whole bunch of taxes to be able to have a good tax return so that I showed my W-2 and my tax return to the bank. So the bank could go give me a loan and then refi out of this thing. And then, giving me the address where I could send my stool sample when I was done. It's like, hey, at least the lady who gave me the rectal exam was really gentle, So like that was, I spent so much time and energy and effort on that, not just myself, but also risking partners. Like I was getting investors to put up their credit. I'm lucky I didn't get sued. And so, dude, it's more simple than everybody makes it out to be. And then you find out you can't get any more than four 75 loan to value Fannie and Freddie loans, and you're like, oh, I'm dealing with the banks on the commercial level.
On the commercial side.
Yeah. So
I like it. And there's a lot of capital out there. I think that is true right now. You just work your friends and family. Somebody knows somebody who's probably got some money, and then get them in your deal, make it a partner.
And situation. Jeff, I'll leave you with one last thing. I'm talking about equity partnerships. That is a big boy game. If I were getting started, I wouldn't do that. I would be doing lease options.
Yeah.
Lease a property from someone who really wants to sell it, option it for long term. There's one person who I'd recommend. I'm thinking about coming up with a course to teach lease options. I don't have it right now. The best person out there is Wendy Patton, Patton. And if I were in Washington, this is part of the reason why I want to go on your podcast, was to tell blue collar people in Washington, this is who you need. She's got a course that'll cost you $997. I don't get anything from it. I'm not an affiliate or anything like that. But she will teach you how to do lease options and subject twos. I'm a no debt guy, so I don't even want to deal with sub twos, but I will deal with lease options, because those options are something that, you don't necessarily need to own real estate. You just need to control real estate. Yeah. And lease options help you do that. So I know we're running up against it, but that's what I'd recommend.
I love that. Well, we'll have to have you back on, Brad, because we could chat all day. And you're so full of information and just for my own learning, like it's just great for me to just think, there are different strategies, and you are a no debt strategy, and there's the debt strategy, and there's a little bit of both. And it's great. It's just great for people to know that there are so many different ways to do this. To your point, single family up to owning hotels. Like there's so many ways to get into the game. there are a lot of wrong ways to do it, but there's also a lot of right ways to do it. There's a lot of right ways to do it.
Right.
And I like your idea of just knowing yourself first.
Yeah.
What kind of person are you?
Yep.
I would like to be a big apartment person, but I'm married to a person who loves 1920 something old homes and bringing them back to life. And every time I bring up buying a large apartment, that is not in our books. She's just like, no, I don't want to repeat the same layout 34 times. I want my old house that I get to go in and I get to love and I get to stage. That's what she wants. So, it's part of it. That's a partnership. And then my partner and I we have to decide on where we're going to be. So,
your wife and my wife, we get along because she likes the design part of it. I'm function over form all day long. Yeah. My wife is the exact opposite.
Yeah,
but to leave you, I bought the hotel I'm selling on Friday. I actually bought on a lease option.
Oh, nice!
I did a lease option. You can lease option just about anything. We got 4 or 5 more shows in this thing, I'm sure. So
yeah, we got a whole show just on lease options. So awesome, Brad. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll make sure that there are links to your website, to Brad's book, and everything else we mentioned in the show notes. You can find those over at wsreip.com or anywhere that you find your podcast. Brad, thanks again for joining us today.
Jeff, appreciate it, man.